Well, while that's loading up, I'd like to just to thank everybody for coming out this morning. I appreciate you coming to hear us all talk. I'm going to present the results of a recent study that I've been involved in, along with my co-presenters, Dr. Tom Templin, who is in the room, and Andrew Everline, who wasn't able to make it to AIESEP this year. And we looked at professional socialization for master's and doctoral students through professional organizations. And it's been a topic that we found to be really interesting and in real need of research, primarily because the study of health and physical education graduate students has been rather sparse in the literature. You don't see a lot of that coming out. And now a recent issue of JTP back in 2011 highlighted some issues related to the recruitment, training, and placement of doctoral students. And as part of that, Hans van der Mars noted that well-trained peak doctoral students are the lifeblood for a healthier future, the future of research, teacher training, and school physical education programs. And we would definitely agree with that if we're going to have high-quality PEAT programs, good researchers within PEAT, etc. We need to have good training programs for our doctoral students and for our graduate students more generally. So as part of that, we believe that it's integral to study the way that health and physical education graduate students are prepared and socialized for their roles as future faculty members. And there's a lot of things related to doctoral training that we would argue should be studied, but the socialization process, I think, is an important one. And so one way to look at that is through the lens of occupational socialization theory. This is a dialectical model of socialization, which explains the recruitment, training, and socialization of teachers in the health and physical education profession. And it's typically broken down into three different phases. The first of which is acculturation, and this is that idea of anticipatory or pre-training socialization. So from the time that you're born up until the time that you make that decision to pursue a career in physical education by enrolling in a teacher training program, all of the stuff that happens during that time period constitutes acculturation. So you have interactions with teachers and with coaches and with your parents and counselors, and all of these different socializing agents help to either predispose you towards or against a potential career in physical education. And so those who choose to go on to become physical education teachers enter professional socialization, which is teacher training, typically in a university setting. In the United States, it's typically a 4-year program that includes a variety of experiences such as methods courses and field-based experiences, student teaching, as well as kind of general education classes, and then at a lot of universities such as Purdue, we have a core of classes that all students on campus have to take. So it's kind of this mix of experiences, but the idea is that through professional socialization, we'll be able to train our health and physical education recruits in a way that will make them successful once they go out into the real world of teaching when they have their first job. And that's whether that actually, I see Dr. Culp shaking his head back and forth, whether that actually occurs is a whole other topic, but that's kind of the theory behind teacher training. Organizational socialization then begins once one gets that first job out in the schools, and it begins at the initiation of that first job, and then really is a career-long process, taking the individual through their career termination. And this is just that on-the-job socialization that occurs in the context of schools, where you're interacting with kind of these key stakeholders in the educational process. And there are many, but I typically tend to think of 4 major ones. Children, so the students that you're teaching, colleagues, parents, and administrators. To me, those are kind of the big 4 that are those socializing agents during one's professional career. And so typically when you read occupational socialization, it kind of lays out these 3 phases, but Kirtner-Smith, drawing upon some work that Hal Lawson did back in the early 90s, talked about a 4th phase that he and his student called secondary professional socialization. And this is kind of an extension of occupational socialization theory that's intended to look at the socialization experiences of health and physical education graduate students. And it's related to that process of becoming teacher educators. Casey and Fletcher wrote a really good autobiography a couple of years ago that was published in the Journal of Teaching and Physical Education that looked at this notion of becoming teacher educators and that transition from being an in-school practitioner to becoming a member of P faculty and what occurs in between through that secondary professional socialization program. And so graduate education has been found to be a particularly potent form of socialization, and some have noted even that it might even be more effective than initial teacher training. And faculty, fellow graduate students in that research experience have all been cited as important socializing factors. Well, what we're interested in is this idea of involvement in professional associations or professional organizations, as I refer to them here, much like AIESEP is. And now I recently finished my PhD, but while I was in my program, I can tell you for sure that coming to these events, both on an international and national level, was a very potent form of socialization for me, meeting different graduate students and faculty members, getting new ideas for research, all of the above. It really was a profound experience. So we were thinking, well, what is the impact of that on graduate students? And so based on that, we developed this kind of purpose for the study that we sought out to do, and just generally to understand health and physical education graduate students' experiences in professional organizations as a form of socialization during their secondary professional socialization or preparation for a career in the academy. And we had three kind of research questions that guided the study, and I'll just put them up there and talk about them generally. First of all, we were interested, why were they interested in getting involved? So what was the hook that pulled them into these organizations? Also, how do they view professional organizations in terms of importance of involvement? Is it something that they think is critical to their professional preparation, or is it something that is just kind of on top of everything else that they're doing? And then third, for those who are involved, what benefits do they perceive that they derive from their involvement? And so, setting the stage in that way, I'll just quickly go through some research methods. We interviewed 16 graduate student members of the American Alliance for Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance. And in talking with these students, we didn't ask them questions specifically about AFERD. We talked about professional organizations more broadly, but in trying to find a population of grad students that we could access and interview and discuss these things with, we thought that going to a professional organization conference would be an obvious place to go. So we arranged some interviews, some focus groups, as I'll talk about in a second, and interviewed them at AFERD events. Most of the participants were currently enrolled in a PhD program. Fewer of them were master's students who indicated that they had the intention to go on to pursue a PhD in the future. The average participant was almost 36 years old, and most of them identified as Caucasian. The participants were members of about 2.5 on average different professional organizations and attended almost 2 conferences a year. And the last thing here is what really struck me, because this was not the case for me necessarily going through our doctoral program, although Dr. Temple was always very supportive of our attendance at events. But that the average allocation per graduate student, and most of them received funding. Out of the 16, 12 of them received funding, and that was the average amount of that funding was almost $600 a year, which I thought was pretty substantive. So I alluded to this before, but we did semi-structured focus group interviews with the grad students. The smallest included 3 students, and the largest had 6, so there's a little bit of variability in the focus group size there. Each focus group was held in a private conference room at the conference venue, and they went on for about 75 minutes, so we had plenty of time to talk and kind of bounce ideas around. We did audio record and then later transcribe the interviews for analysis. And then 2 of us, myself and Andrew Eberlein, analyzed the data using a combination of inductive and deductive analysis. And the reason that we brought those 2 together was that from a deductive perspective, we were able to use occupational socialization as kind of a guiding framework for our analysis, but we also were inductive in that we remained open to different themes and ideas and messages being communicated through the data that might extend or challenge different aspects of occupational socialization theory. And then, of course, our analysis proceeded in a constant comparative way so that our themes developed and changed throughout the analysis process. We enhanced trustworthiness through member checking, peer debriefing, and researcher triangulation. We each independently coded the data, came together to discuss it, and then challenged one another's interpretations and eventually settled on a framework we believe best described the data. And so generally, the participants noted that they received several benefits that were very positive about their involvement in professional organizations. And we identified 3 themes that really came through and we thought best represented their experiences. The first related to their reasons or motives for becoming involved in professional organizations. The second was this idea of professional organizations as a site for networking opportunities. And the third is that they saw professional organizations as a site where they could get kind of continuing, ongoing professional development as graduate students. And so I'll just take a few minutes and go through each of those themes and provide you with some exemplars that communicate what the graduate students' voices were saying in constructing those themes. So the first one, the reason for involvement in professional organizations, all of the graduate students noted that their faculty advisors and their graduate programs were very influential in their involvement in professional organizations. One student talked about his dissertation chair who encouraged him to get involved. Another said, my chair encouraged me to attend conferences as early as possible during my doctoral studies. However, many of them said that they were not involved in professional organizations prior to graduate school. One, Anne, said that when I went to do my graduate studies, I realized and I learned about some POs, but during my undergrad I didn't realize it at all. So she's saying that she didn't even know that professional organizations existed until she got to graduate school. And then Jessica said, I can't say that in my undergrad POs were discussed, I didn't talk about any of that. So faculty members then are important socializing agents in terms of that initiation of involvement, but a lot of that didn't come until these graduate students entered their master's or doctoral programs. Personal motivation was also another theme or sub-theme that kind of emerged from this. The students the grad students we interviewed noted that even though faculty encouragement is important, you have to want to do it. So you have to put in a little more energy and a little more time. It's really important, but as Linda says, only if they, being the students, take it seriously. And then Sandra noted that it's really about that individual motivation. So at the end of the day, what we kind of would draw from this is that faculty encouragement is very important, but it'll only take you as far as your own personal motivation to get involved. So if you're not motivated to get involved and you're not interested, then faculty encouragement might not be as strong as a socializing factor. Related to networking opportunities, for this group, one of the key benefits of professional organization involvement was the opportunity to meet other graduate students and faculty. In fact, all 16 grad students at some point in the interview talked about networking. Matthew talked about the importance of networking and finding like-minded individuals to work with. For him, that's huge. Anthony talked about forming collaborations and getting projects underway with other people. And then Kim mentioned that she likes to meet all of the authors of the articles and textbooks that they read, because those are the people who attend a lot of these professional organization events. And for her, she can read these articles and read these textbooks, but it's something a little bit different when you actually meet the person. And I had a very similar experience to that during my undergraduate career. We used Graham Holt Harlan Parker's textbook, Children Moving, and the very first time I went to AFER, I stopped George Graham. I literally stood outside of the session and asked him to autograph my book for me, because that was a huge thing for me. Like, meeting him was such a cool experience, and so that was something that was very important. And then, while they did talk about the importance of networking, they also did say that networking can be an intimidating thing. Anne hesitated to talk to big name people, and Susan said that she doesn't feel comfortable going up and introducing herself to somebody that she doesn't necessarily know. And then students such as Jan hope for more formalized networking opportunities in professional organization conference schedules. She talked about if there were more formal opportunities for networking, maybe it would be a less intimidating thing. And I do think that a lot of organizations like AFER do build in some opportunities for that professional networking, but perhaps those organizations could do a better job of that even. The third and final theme related to graduate student development. These graduate students talked a lot about new ideas for research and practice. So they said things like, going to these events allowed Jenny to gain an understanding of what was going on in the field. Tara talked about being able to see what other people are doing in terms of research and practice. And then Kim talked about how going to sessions very much like this one helped her to kind of hone in on her dissertation topic. And so this was that really a central idea for them, being able to derive those benefits from involvement in professional organizations. The second sub-theme that came out of this was the importance of presenting research. They viewed professional organizations as a great way to present their research projects and get some feedback. Chantal talked about building up her presentation skills and her curriculum data by attending these conferences. And then Benjamin indicated that once you've gone through an oral presentation and you have feedback from all the faculty members, and after that you can write up a manuscript. So it's very important practice. And then Jen said that conferences are a really important platform for beginning researchers for putting together your first projects. And so just a couple of thoughts, and I know that I am conscious of time, a couple of final thoughts to kind of take away from this in terms of discussion. The faculty encouragement theme documents the role that faculty play in the socialization project process for grad students, and that has been highlighted in some previous research, and obviously anybody who's been through a doctoral program knows that one of the most important agents of socialization is your advisor or your chair. But this investigation also highlights the importance of building connections beyond your individual department. And going back to my experiences, I never would have met George Graham if it hadn't been going to AFER because he worked at a different institution than I was getting my degree at. Presenting research helps prepare grad students to meet the challenges of the academy, to go back to that JPP monograph. And then relationships built with other graduate students are critical, as peers are seen as important socializing agents and potentially future collaborators, as some of the grad students talked about. And finally, undergraduates who are encouraged to become involved in professional organizations may be more likely to do so if we kind of give them that push. Just a very few, this is my last slide, a couple of future directions, and I'll just say a couple of things about implications. Kind of two facets related to future directions. We believe that more work is needed in terms of this idea of secondary professional socialization, and for both graduate students and then also for early career researchers. And there's a great symposium a couple days ago on early career researchers that I think kind of speaks to this. But we also think that it's important to continue to investigate the socializing influence of organizations such as AIESEP, such as AFER in the United States, and other organizations elsewhere, not only for graduate students, but for pre-service teachers, in-service teachers, as well as faculty and scholars. A couple of implications as I wrap up. Faculty should consider encouraging early involvement among both undergraduate and graduate students to get them into organizations early on. PO conference organizers should consider structuring in more of those networking opportunities so that grad students feel more comfortable approaching other people, and I think that AIESEP actually does a very nice job with that, with the wine and the cocktail hour at the end of the conference. It kind of loosens up everybody's collars a little bit and gives them a little bit of, makes them feel a little bit more comfortable talking to folks. And then finally, because of the importance of presenting research and building one's presentation skills and their curriculum data, graduate faculty may consider intentionally integrating PO involvement as a component of graduate education. So you might have a course where the final project is to put together an abstract based on one's research and submit it to a conference for presentation. And so I really appreciate everybody coming in and listening to me talk on behalf of our research team. And if you do have any questions or comments, if we have a few minutes, I'd be happy to take that.
So the next challenge is to get AIESEP and replicate it with all of the kinesiology people. Because I think they probably maybe even do a better job. I mean, they take truckloads of students to their conferences.
Yeah.
They're physiologists.
The American College of Sports Medicine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially the regional. Go ahead.
Yeah, if you look at the socialization process, do you look at this reciprocal process, or is it just one direction?
So that's a very good question, because occupational socialization does assume a dialectical framework, so that the student may be socialized by the organization, but the student may also have a reciprocal socializing impact on the organization itself. That is not something that really came up in our interviews, but it definitely would be something that we'd be interested in looking at. I will tell you, though, that we submitted a report based on this research to AFERD, and they're considering that report in the structuring of their professional development opportunities for grad students at conferences.
And AFERD is, for those who might not know.
Well, that's a loaded question, I guess. But it's the American Alliance for Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance, also known as, what's the new name? SHAPE.
The Society.
The Society for Health and Physical Educators is the new name of AFERD.
The other part of this dialectic is that graduate students, or faculty for that matter, when attending professional organizations, may resist some of the messages that come from the activities that they engage in, or the presentations that they hear. They may resist just the whole notion that the professional conference or an association is useful to them.
And they might not go, and that's one thing that I probably should have mentioned, is that our sample was constructed of people who are already attending professional organization events, so you might get a very different perspective if you interviewed grad students who maybe weren't involved, or maybe you're members but don't go to conferences regularly. So I would definitely think that that's kind of another future direction for research, to get a more holistic perspective on this issue.
We have one thing. Slack supervisor.